Hey. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome back to the God Squad. Listen, we missed y'all on yesterday, had some scheduling conflicts, but we are here today. We're here to make it up. We'll make it up to you. We're gonna make it up to you. It plenty of bullshit going on in the world for us to talk about. So ain't no shortage of stuff we can talk about. 100 days into the Trump regime, and here we are with the God Squad. Dillon Cruz, the tattooed theologian. What's up?
The longest 100 days in the history of humanity, it feels like. That 100 days feels like 10 damn years.
In the entire history of mankind.
I mean, it's well nigh impossible to keep up with the amount of corruption and deflection and sheer cacistocracy stupidity that's coming out of that White House. Just don't even, and in America in general, because we'll probably talk about something that happened in Minnesota yesterday or the day before as well. Just people being crazy.
Well, we're 100 days into the Trump administration, and needless to say, it's not looking all that great for him. So much to the point that they want to fire the posters over at Fox News. It always tickles me when if it's good news, everything is good. Everything is good. Everything is right. Democracy is working. There's nothing wrong with voting systems. The world is just peachy. But if it's bad news, everything is bad. Everybody's bad. Everybody's lying. Everybody's cheating. The voting machines are rigged. China is involved. I don't know. It's always hilarious to me how that goes, since his poll numbers are terrible. He's in the basement on every rung, from the economy to immigration to job. It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever they're asking him about, the people ain't with it. What do you think? What's in the news? What's going on in your world?
Well, as I've heard it said, he's underwater on every polling metric, and that's good to see, because people are picking up on the nonsense. But one of the most heinous things that I've heard about in this 100 days, and it again deals with ICE and federal marshals and the FBI, they busted down the door and tore up a family's house and pulled them out into the rain in their underwear and made them lay down in the rain while they took all their money, their life savings, their computers, their phones, and they were American citizens.
And then how hard could it have been to verify that before you did that? You got access, you got the FBI, you got the NSA, you got the CIA. How hard could it have been to verify who's living there that day? It couldn't have been that hard to do. Yeah. A debt collector could do skip tracing. You mean to tell me you couldn't figure out who was living there that day?
And then the guy one of the agents said, "We know it was a little rough today."
That is the equivalent of we know we really fucked up. We know we fucked up.
Yeah, you destroyed their home, and they can't even. The last I heard, they haven't even been able to ascertain where their stuff is, which agency has it, and all the agencies are like, "Yeah, we weren't there." Well, who was it then? And you talk about getting sued. Somebody's ass is getting sued.
I was listening to NPR on the way to work, and I had heard it a couple of days ago, but I was listening to NPR on the way to work, and they were explaining how they had brought them out in their underwear.
Yeah.
And that if they they told them if they wanted to get dressed, they had to do it in front of them.
Right.
And I was thinking, and this is a woman and her daughters, and all I could think was these people are about to be set for life, because the level of trauma, and it's not about the money, but the level of trauma that you done put these young ladies through and this family through, and then you ransacked their house and just left with all their money and their phone and laptops and everything, so they can't even call nobody after you did that. Because you had the wrong people almost immediately. because you know who you have a warrant for, and you know that woman and those 2 children are not that. They're not on your paperwork. So how far do you have to go into it before you acknowledge we made a mistake? It shouldn't it took too much past the front door.
Yeah, yeah, and they don't. What is this thing where they need to go through with, ramming devices and breaking glass and putting guns in people's faces and all kind of shit like that? Like all immigrants are some kind of, hold up with automatic weapons or something.
I don't know.
Kind of shit that happens.
The cruelty is the point.
Yeah,
we're big, bad, and in control. We're, be afraid, be very afraid. It's the point. It's the point. But my thing is, y'all look like idiots. You look dumb, because you mean to tell me, with all the resources at your disposal of the entire United States apparatus of intelligence, y'all couldn't figure out who lived in that house before you rammed down the door, before you pulled them out of there? And I promise you, not one woman nor child inside of that house is on that warrant. So when you seen that, when you was going through the house, pulling them out of there, and you had to know right off the bat that ain't who you came there for. Before you pulled them out the bed, before you pulled them out the house, before you got them outside laying down naked on the ground with drawers, before any of that. At what point does the light go off in your head and say, maybe we shouldn't continue with this?
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're just going to throw spaghetti at the wall just to see what sticks when it comes to immigration and kidnapping and detaining and all that kind of shit, this is the kind of thing that you get. This is not a measured response to a problem that they've created. This is terroristic behavior. Mm-hmm. And then that jackass had the temerity to say, we know it got a little rough.
No, really?
Oh, man. So, I mean, and they're probably going to hide behind their thin blue line, which is why I hate that fucking flag. The blue wall of secrecy that cops and agencies like that seem to get.
That family, fortunately for them, but unfortunately for the emotional trauma that they're gonna be experiencing, because I know they ain't sleeping well these days. I know it.
Oh no, no!
I know they're not.
That interview was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I already know. Fortunately for them, they're gonna be set for life. They're gonna have to be, because they don't even want to. There's not even gonna be it ain't gonna even make it to a hearing where there's gonna be discovery and everything will come out. Well, it might. Who knows? They might say no. We don't want a settlement. We want to go all the way to the court. We're gonna drag you through the whole thing. We're not gonna accept no money. We're gonna drag you through the whole thing so we could do discovery, so we could see how all the, you get to do. If you don't settle, you get to do all that discovery. You get to get all up in the business. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Oh, Keith said, remember those are Biden's numbers. Keith, here's the thing about it. In a minute, they're gonna start blaming Obama, or they keep Biden, Obama, Harris, Clinton. They keep them names in their mouth. It don't matter what's going on. They're gonna Dillon. He said, this is the Biden's economy. I guess if the numbers had skyrocketed and we were doing well, it'd have been his economy.
Well, last year when it was skyrocketing, he said it's my economy because I'm so popular. But now that my policies are implemented and the market is in the damn toilet, it's Biden's fault. Man.
It is so funny to me, but you know what? It was crazier to me is that his supporters they'll
I know.
They'll eat that up. He can say in Biden's good economy that it's his, and that the reason why the economy is good is because they're excited about they're optimistic and excited about the possibility of a Trump presidency. So that's why Biden's ending quarter was good, because he was about to be president again. And then he comes in and throws the American economy and almost the world economy into the garbage can, into the trash inside a few months. And now the economy is so uncertain that it's possible that we still might roll off into a recession by summertime. And that's Biden's fault. This is leftover from Biden's. And that's Biden's fault. I'm like, okay. So throwing tariffs on everybody, allies, friends, foes, family alike, and then snatching them off and then putting them back and then snatching them off and then raising and lowering and Liberty Day is on and Liberty Day is off again. None of that had anything to do with what's going on with the economy.
Well, did you hear about the latest stupid thing that he did on social media?
Lord,
where
no.
he said anybody that buys Iranian oil, we're coming after you with targeted sanctions. And guess who buys 90% of Iran's oil?
We probably do.
China. So he said there will be no trade with anybody doing business with Iran. Now,
I thought it was going to be us, to be honest. Well, there probably was a time when we bought their oil. But, you know,
the ports are going to be empty.
Who is advising him? You know, it doesn't even matter who's advising him. He don't listen. Because
he's probably tweeting from his toilet.
He had people around him that told all those terrorists were going to be terrible for the economy. He didn't listen to that.
Yeah. I mean, I've already seen pictures of the ports in LA and Seattle, and they're not booming. They're not moving. They're not doing anything. So how many American people is he putting out of jobs because the ports aren't bringing in container ships from China? Now, we could say a lot of different things about the economy and how it works, but you don't just throw a fucking 18-inch crescent wrench into the gears of a machine to make it stop, to make adjustments, to tweak things. You get somebody in there who knows what the hell they're doing.
Somebody that knows what they're doing.
And this kakistocracy lunacy. And did you see the cabinet meeting this week?
Listen, I couldn't make myself. I couldn't make myself because the last one was so cringy. I couldn't even make myself do it. But you can tell me if you watched the movie for me, how did it go?
Oh my gosh. Well, here's how bad it was. Ann Coulter. They lost Ann Coulter. She said in a tweet, can we have a cabinet meeting without all the Kim Jong-il praise? No, because Pam Bondi, I thought she was going to start getting ready to fluff him or something. Because the way she talked to him, it was, oh my God, Mr. President, this has just been a historic 100 days. And so, I wanted to scrub my eyeballs with some Ajax and go retch into the toilet. It was bad. And then Marco Rubio just said, you know who else I'm not going to tell about the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case? A judge, because this is foreign policy, and the foreign policy is the purview of, and no, it ain't, motherfucker. Immigration is domestic policy. And the courts have a right to know.
How they were saying Biden wasn't doing enough. And he's got the borders open. He's not doing enough to get the folks out. Here's the thing: when you're doing something lawfully, it takes time to do a thing right. They don't want to do it lawfully nor right, and they want to skirt the law. But in good news, a Trump judge did I think in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Ruled that using that 18th century or that law from the 1800s, the Alien Enemies Act or whatever it is, that is unlawful. That's outside of the scope. And everybody knew that. So even if they didn't rule that way, we would just say, okay, he just got that judge in his pocket because we're not at war. We're not at war and we don't have a country invading us. So
he said it was like it was nonsense.
Go ahead.
He said it. I mean, the judge basically said your argument is nonsense.
And is that a liberal activist judge? I guess maybe the one appointed by Trump. I guess.
Yeah, because Trump is real known for appointing liberal activist judges who are woke. How's he going to turn that one on its head?
Right.
Because he can't pin it on Biden or Obama or even Bush or Clinton for
any of them.
Judge.
This is your own judge. Who now? I do think the judge threw him like a caveat, like a little piece of meat, because he didn't make it like a nationwide ruling, which he could have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he made it just I think just Texas or whatever the case, but it could have been, but there's been a lot of debate over whether or not these district judges can put an injunction on the whole country. They can lawfully, but he didn't do that. So I believe he did reserve a little bit of, you know what I'm saying?
Well, then they would take it up to Supreme Court then at some point if they put it as a blanket thing over the.
Yeah.
But the Supreme Court's already ruled 9-0, man, and you ain't, and they're still not complying, and that's what worries me. But I do watch a couple of times a week. I'll watch this guy Michael Popak on Legal AF. He's part of the Midas Touch Network.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
And he's talking. I saw his thing today, and he was talking about how these federal judges don't trust the Department of Justice anymore. One of them said, "Get me a court reporter because we're not going to have some back and forth about what was said in my courtroom. Get me a court reporter right now." And that's when, after that's taken down by the court reporter, then you can send it up to the federal judge. She's like, "We're not doing this nonsense."
No, because y'all can't be trusted.
Yeah.
And you get right out of this court and go out here in front of a camera and say something that didn't even happen in here. That I didn't say, nor did you say.
Yeah. Well, they can't do that now because the court reporter's taken down everything. And I hope every judge does that.
Every judge should do that, because why aren't you doing that anyways? It shouldn't be word of mouth. It should be on the record what anyone says in the court, because it's affecting people's lives. It's affecting people's families, businesses, and livelihoods, and safety. It could be life or death. If you're getting sent to a gulag in El Salvador for life, that ain't even the country you came from. That's the part that I don't understand. And I imagine that whether it's later on this year, next year, or 4 years from now, when Trump is out of office, all those people are going to have to be brought back, or the United States is going to have to pay for them to get sent to the country they actually came from, because otherwise that's just human trafficking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because here's the thing. If my only crime, and this is for the ones that aren't, they claim all immigrants are some type of murderer, drug dealer, rapist, or something. We know that's not true. But if my only crime, this is going to be 98%, if my only crime is that I came into the United States illegally, right? And even the ones that came legally, they're also getting rid of those folks too. But let's say that the only crime is that they just crossed over illegally. That's it. And it stops there. They don't have a criminal record otherwise in this country or in the country they came from or any other country. There's nothing in, and let me say this first. There's nothing in United States law, nor the law where they came from, nor any type of international law that says that coming into a country illegally results in a life sentence in a prison in a country you didn't ever came from. There's nothing in the law that justifies that. And I am I'm prophesying right now that the United States is actually going to come up under human rights violations in international law for human trafficking. Because if you're taking people from a country, putting them in prison in another country without legal representation, without connection to their family, without access to lawyers or anything like that. So you're basically sentencing them to life in a foreign prison for a crime that does not have any type of sentence that would warrant a life sentence in a foreign prison, or any kind of legal way to put them there, not lawfully. We're gonna be up against a human rights case, in the international court here pretty soon. That's my prediction. I
hope so. Did you see yesterday? I saw the video yesterday, so it was sometime this week. Eric Swalwell said something about the Republicans' policies are going to end up with more American citizen children being deported who have cancer. And then he just let it sit there for like 15 seconds. And then another congressman said, let's put it another way. Show of hands who think American citizens with cancer and who are children should be deported or not deported. Only the Democrats raised their hand. Every single Republican kept their hand down to signify that they think that children born in the United States, even if they have cancer, should be deported.
They don't care if they listen.
And that's that birthright citizenship bullshit.
Yeah, the criteria is brown skin, brown or black. It don't matter.
Oh, yeah.
Because I promise you, they ain't going after all these expired and overstayed visas from these Europeans, Canadians, or otherwise. They're not. And there's hundreds of thousands. They're not going after them. And they have them in their database just like they have all these other folks. They're not going after those folks who have overstayed their visas or here on expired visas, work visas, college visas, or been done with college, been done with whatever work assignment. They're not going after these Europeans. They're not. So it's not about the law. It's not about lawful immigration, because they're going after folks who came through the immigration process lawfully. Then they did a amendment or resolution or whatever the hell they did up there that they want to make it okay in the law to deport American citizens. And if you remember, that bald-headed demon had said during the campaign, y'all, you know that one I'm talking about, that little bald-headed Nazi. He had said that they wanted to denaturalize. He used that word.
Denaturalize American citizens. Yep.
Denaturalize. So that's what they're getting up to by passing this thing that says you could deport American citizens, because if you're deporting American citizens, that's quote that's the denaturalization, because you can't become an American citizen only but a couple ways. You either got to be born here or you got to be naturalized. That's it.
Right.
Ain't but two ways to get up through here. You either naturalize the long way, or you could go through the military and get naturalized. But either way, it ain't but two ways. You got to be born here, or you could be naturalized. That's it. So if they're talking about deporting American citizens, they're talking about the naturalized ones, because they can't lawfully deport the ones that are born here. At least right now. That could all change. You know, he got the Supreme Court in his back pocket, so you never know. You never know.
Yeah. Well, kidnapping little kids and sending them to a foreign country that they've never been to with no medical care when they need medicines is an unimaginable level of cruelty. And Dollar Store Himmler, or whatever the fuck Stephen Miller wants to cosplay as a little bald Nazi. Lord, if you're still in the striking down people with lightning game, I got a couple names, you know, and Miller's at the top of the list, because that dude is evil. That dude was evil when he was in high school. There are videos of him shouting racist, horrific, xenophobic nonsense in high school. So he hasn't changed. He's 39 years old. And we talked about this before. I'm 53, and I look a lot younger than that clown. Because I ain't evil like that.
Evil has a way of aging you. Two things, and we're gonna move on to the fundamentalists, the FFW, because I know you got a good one for us today. But two things: did you see that Trump said that people just should be okay with being poor? With what do you say? Kids might have just to get a few little less toys.
$2 instead of $30. So they're calling him Donnie $2 now.
Yeah, who the hell's buying $30 on Christmas anyways? So you're basically saying you ought to be all right with struggling for whatever my mission and vision is for this country. You should be okay with that. Just struggle a little while. And this is coming from somebody who does not know what struggle means or is, and has never experienced in his life. But he's telling, and what's so crazy is his base is poor.
Right. Austerity for y'all, but not for me. And I'm going to keep shitting in my golden toilet. And y'all are going to keep funding that for me. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the first thing. The second thing is, you know, this clown is planning one of these authoritarian government style parades for his birthday. Did you hear about that?
Yeah. He tried to pull that crap at the first time around, too, when he was in the office, and it didn't fly. But I bet it flies this time, because Pete Hegseth, how that man has a job is beyond me, because the first head rolled from the Signal Gate, Mike Waltz, he got fired, but he's going to go be nominated for the diplomat to the UN, but he has to be confirmed by the Senate. So he's going to have to answer some questions about Signalgate. And so hopefully,
and the only reason why Hexeth is still there is because they're trying to save face. He's a total clown. The only reason he's there is because they're trying to save face is as hard as they can.
Yeah.
Because he's a total mistake. He's a complete and total mistake. Okay. But anyhow, I know you got some stuff for us. Shout out to Elaine and Judy for joining us tonight. Keith for joining us tonight. Thank y'all for joining us on this off day Friday. Thank God it's Friday, and thank God you're here. We love you. What you got for us, Dillon? What you got for us? I know you got something for us.
All right. So the fundamentalist fuckwittery this week, the representative is Dr. Andrew T. Walker. And guys like this, I do not like for a huge reason. And that is because of the disingenuousness with which they approach everything. Now, I first came to know about who this guy was from a National Review article last year, The Case for a Theocentric Right. And for those who don't know, the National Review was started by William F. Buckley Jr., who was a racist segregationist and who used his new paper, publication, the National Review, to publish libertarian-style economic stuff, deregulation and all that kind of stuff, and racist, white supremacist segregation kind of stuff. So it should come as no surprise that Dr. Walker, who is a biblical ethicist of all things, teaches at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. And for those who've been paying attention at home, that seminary has been or was or still is run by Albert Mohler, who found himself as the representative of fundamentalist fuckwittery one week. And one of the things that Albert Mohler is famous for is being a slavery apologist. So this kind of all tracks for Andrew T. Walker. Now, I read this article, The Case for the Theocentric Right. And the problem with it is, and this guy has a PhD, and I don't know about the quality of where he went to school, but if I can read through an article and pick out multiple fallacious arguments in the first go, I'm not going to think that the quality of their education is going to be very good, right? So he tries to say in this article that conservatives must believe in God because godless conservatism will lead to rampant progressivism and paganism. I don't know where he's getting that from. He completely discounts the notion that there are people who are progressive who have ever converted to Christianity. Nobody has genuinely converted. And that's the problem. See, the premise that he starts this whole thing off with is biblical inerrancy. And he treats the Bible like it's a history book and a science book. And we all know by now that is not the case. But I just want to highlight a couple things from this article where he says stupid shit. One of them is, we should call for theocratic conservatism, but do so with humility, which is why the First Amendment's commitment to religious liberty matters as much for conservatism as it does for America more broadly. But then he goes on to say in this article and another one where he's trying to distance himself and the Christian right from Christian nationalism, that any argument against conservative Southern Baptist slaveocracy religion dominating the political discourse and making people live by their rules legally is illegitimate. That there are no legitimate arguments against forcing people to live the way that you want to live. Now, here's the thing, Dr. Walker. If your version of Christianity, which again, slaveholder religion, you might want to do something about that, man. It says that you can't do X, Y, and Z, then don't do X, Y, Z. But that does not mean that Dillon Neighbor Cruz can't do X, Y, Z, or Desimber Rose, or any other man, woman, non-binary, transgender, etc. person can't do it. It's between you and God, and y'all act like it's all a settled matter, and that natural law this and history that. And again, he's presupposing that America was founded on Christian principles. And he says that without godly conservatism, then the United States will not move forward with theocratic conservatism, but will move towards secularism. My guy, it's a secular constitution. Jesus is never mentioned. God is never mentioned. The wall of separation of church and state, it on purpose, because go read a history book, find out why, because orthodoxy was fought about and murder and torture and rape and all manner of horrificness in the name of my version of Christian nationalism or authoritarian Christianity is better than yours. So this clown, who again has a PhD, but he's not a scientist. I was looking at another article that he wrote, and it was about the transgender revolution. Okay. And again, a fallacious beginning. And then in the article, he says, and now I'm going to use a slur just for illustrative purposes only. And he said, I wrote a book about transgenderism. And transgenderism is a slur used to dehumanize and delegitimize the lived experience of transgender people. When I interviewed Charlotte Clymer on this show, I asked her about that because I had heard that it was, in fact, a slur, and she gave me a very long and detailed answer that it was. The Gay and Lesbian Anti-Defamation League says that it's a slur, and it really started being used a lot in 2023 when some really bigoted person made a video about it and used that term. So he's writing a book about a topic that he knows nothing about medically or scientifically, biologically, and he's basing it on Genesis, and then he's using slurs, and then he's going to pretend that this book is somehow showing that we can love our neighbors by telling them that they're wrong about who the fuck they are. And he's a Trump supporter, not surprisingly. And I just want to read some of his tweets real quick.
Lord, about to piss me off, ain't you? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. It does not matter that March 31st is an annual progressive liturgical day known as Trans Day of Visibility. What matters is that our Catholic, in air quotes, president and his staff knew that it would be controversial for it to fall on Easter and decided that appeasing the far left and offending Christians was an acceptable trade-off. My dude, I'm a Christian. I wasn't offended. I'm offended by your dumbass, though. There is no law mandating that they recognize a clown world holiday. They choose to do so and are deserving of criticism. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on. This one is from 2020. Justice Clarence Thomas is the most clear-eyed moral jurist on the Supreme Court. Pass it on. Justice Clarence Thomas, for those who don't remember, is friends with a Nazi who buys him lots of presents.
Yeah, so, he is their token Negro.
Exactly. So the reason why I picked him again is because he argues from a place of a false premise, the inerrancy of Scripture, and the false premise that the United States is a Christian nation. And he presupposes that Christianity is one thing and one thing only, that progressive Christians don't exist and progressive theists don't exist in his mind, and that he tries to soft pedal Christian nationalism by rebranding and repackaging and disclaiming any effort at pushback as far left nonsense. And then he equates things with communism. That it's not 1987 anymore, man. The Cold War is over. Russia is not a communist nation anymore. China is nominally, but it's a weird melange of autocratic dictatorship and hyper-capitalism. So for all of those reasons, Dr. Andrew T. Walker of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, is this week's representative of fundamentalist fuckwittery. And my advice to you, Andrew, is to maybe read some medical science and some biological science, because you don't have a fucking clue about those things. And you're using the cloak of the Bible and saying that you want to love your neighbors by making them be something that they're not, and lying about the number of people who detransition and saying that it's a tidal wave and all this stuff. It ain't.
It ain't even a tidal wave of folks who's transitioning, let alone folks who's transitioning.
Exactly. So for all those reasons, Andrew T. Walker is this week's representative of fundamentalist fuckwittery. So if you're buying his books or reading his books, find better books, because they're not worth your time.
Yeah, that's wild. But you always find a good one. There ain't no shortage of them.
No, but you know, and that's a major Southern Baptist seminary. Yeah, and that same seminary is where William Wolfe went to school. He's also been on that segment. He's also a major Christian nationalist, part of the editing team for the Statement on Christian Nationalism and the Gospel, which is 12 pages of anti-Jesus bullshit. So that's why he's important, and that's why I wanted to share that with y'all.
Well, thank you for doing the deep research into these clowns, so we don't have to do it. But bringing it to our knowledge, so we could avoid them. So make sure you avoid that guy. Not that you'll have a hard time doing that. We ain't listening to these motherfuckers. And speaking of these motherfuckers, it's been a long time. Shouldn't have left you without a segment to think to. So let me get around to it. This week, and I've been doing this and that, the last couple weeks, we've had some great guests. So if y'all have been missing the fundamentalist fuckwittery and this motherfucker, well, we're back this week, okay, with a vengeance. Okay, this motherfucker right here. Now,
oh my God,
the Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, this clown right here had the nerve to attempt to whitewash and justify the 3/5 compromise. And you may or may not have heard of that coming up in school, and it's a chance that your grandchildren's grandchildren may not hear of it the way that we're going these days with them trying to ban history, so long as it makes white children uncomfortable, out of schools curriculums, because they don't want people to hear about this stuff, okay? Like that little bald-headed Nazi said, we're going to teach our kids. Did you see that press?
Oh God, yes. Yeah.
We're going to, these schools, we're going to be teaching our students to love America, And if you don't get somewhere with your fascist ass, your bald-headed, miserable ass, and sit down somewhere, okay? They're going to love America as much as America loved them. How about that? How about that, motherfucker? How about that? So, this Lieutenant Micah Beckwith, I just want to show you what this clown, I don't know if I'm gonna play the whole thing, but I'm gonna show you a little bit of what this clown said I think this past week that he's coming up under fire for. So let me show you, let me show you, go a little something like this.
Religious leaders condemn Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith for praising a law that declared slaves 3/5 of a person. The 3/5 compromise in the 1787 Constitutional Convention counted slaves as only 3/5 of a person when totaling the population. Beckwith, responding to state Democrats discussing a DEI bill, argued it was not pro-discrimination. As News 8's Hernan Gutierrez reports, local clergy want Governor Mike Braun to denounce these comments.
Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith posted a video on social media calling the 3/5 compromise a great move, comments some black faith leaders consider racist.
He was trying to support his base, demonstrating that he is a racist to them, and we receive it that way.
Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith is under fire for this video in which he says the 3/5 compromise did not discriminate against black people held as slaves in the United States.
This was a great move by the North to make sure that slavery would be eradicated in our nation. They think the Three-Fifths Compromise was something that was a scourge on Black people. That's not what it was.
Reverend David Green and the group Concerned Clergy of Indianapolis say Beckwith's remarks are offensive and historically inaccurate.
It's appalling that someone who calls himself a youth pastor would be saying to anybody that's 3/5 of a person is appropriate.
Dr. Clarissa Myrick Harris White, an historian with Morehouse College in Atlanta, says the Three-Fifths Compromise codified the institution of slavery into the U.S. Constitution. It wasn't a move to eradicate it.
The slave states actually had more representation. And because they had more representation, that means that they had more power. So it was about gaining power in the governing of the new country.
She believes Beckwith's messaging is unprecedented from someone in government, which could fuel more discrimination.
It creates a false narrative. It's scary stuff. In previous periods of our history, there was at least an acknowledgement that there was discrimination, that there was racism.
It's a message echoed by Green, who's calling on Governor Mike Braun to step in.
We need a public apology from the lieutenant governor. We need statements from our governor saying, yeah, I do diversity.
News 8 has reached out to Micah Beckwith and Governor Mike Braun's.
Okay. So I wanted to play that whole thing so you could get the idea, because some of y'all probably hadn't heard of what the Three-Fifths Compromise. Believe it or not, I'm sure there's some folks out that will watch or listen to this podcast that don't know what that is, because we actually have listeners in Canada, Australia, the Middle East even, which we looked at our numbers the other day, and I was surprised to see that we have a global listenership and viewership of this show. So kudos to Dillon Desimber on that and the God Squad. But listen, why is this guy this motherfucker? Because this motherfucker really did try to gaslight the whole country, 400 years of history, and say that the Three-Fifths Compromise was a great move by the North. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you for real? Be fucking for real. Like they say, be fucking for real. Are you serious with this bullshit? How can, and he called himself a Christian. Did you hear that in there, that he's a youth pastor somewhere?
Oh man, get your kids out of that church.
Nothing like that white Christian nationalism. Okay? He calls himself a pastor. And how do you arrive that that's a great move? A great move for who?
It wasn't a great move for the North. It's a great move for the South.
Because it gave disproportionate power to Southern states, which of course impacted the trajectory of this nation. And not only that, let's get away from who it gave power to, because white men were the ones in power. White property owning white men were in power. What it did, I'm going to read you something. I'm going to read it verbatim from the populationeducation.org, because I want you to understand just how much declaring somebody as not a complete and full human impacted African Americans, Black people in this country. Not just Black people, even Native Americans. So I'm going to read this for you. The legal implications of the Three-Fifths Compromise itself remain the law's most notorious effect. First, let me pause 1 minute and say the Electoral College is an echo and shadow of the Three-Fifths Compromise. Let me say that. You go back and do your homework on that yourself, kids. Okay, that's your homework. Okay. Though slavery was deleted in other parts of the Constitution, this clause explicitly codified Black enslaved people as less than human under federal law. They already treated us like cattle anyways. They already treated us like property, but it put it in the law. In contrast, white women and children, though not voting citizens, were still counted in the state's population for a number of purposes. Listen, pay attention, class. The Three-Fifths Compromise created a unique political status that dehumanized the vast majority of Black people in the United States. This status was used as justification for countless more discriminatory policies, particularly, this is important, Dred Scott v. Sanford. And listen, kids, students, if you don't know about the Dred Scott ruling, go look it up. We ain't got time to dive into it. It's deep. Go look it up. The Dred Scott ruling, the Supreme Court decision that ruled that Black people were not legally entitled to U.S. citizenship regardless, pay attention, of whether they were enslaved or free. Now listen to me. Didn't you hear that clown say it was about bringing on freedom? Isn't that what he said? Is that what he said?
He said it was to end slavery.
He said it was to end slavery. Okay. Because apparently we can't read and we don't know our history, right? We just dumb out here and stupid and illiterate. But anyhow, back to the truth. The reason why that it was regardless, it didn't entitle them to citizenship regardless of whether they were slave or free, because if you ain't a motherfucking human, then it don't matter if you a slave, or if you're free. If you ain't human, how you gonna be a citizen?
Right.
Beck with? Well, it was a great move. Oh yeah, it was a great move for the South, for the states' rights South, for the we want to own human beings South, for the we want to traffic human beings from Africa to the United States, rape, sell, beat, brutalize the South. Yeah, we want them to pick our cotton and raise and breastfeed our babies and be the mistresses to our husbands and have all these mixed children running all around that we still will enslave and then rape them all over again because they're slaves. It was a great move for the South. The political consequences of the Three-Fifths Compromise are more difficult to quantify, but historians agree that the compromise is the outcome of events. White lawmakers from slaveholding states gained more seats I want y'all to pay attention to this, because the effect of this is still to today, to right now in the year of our Lord 20 and 25. White lawmakers from slaveholding states gained more seats in the House of Representatives without being required to advocate for laws that benefited enslaved people, as those enslaved people could not vote and were not considered constituents. And you ain't considered a constituent because you ain't considered a citizen. And you ain't considered a citizen because you ain't considered a motherfucking human being. The election of 1800, where Thomas Jefferson ultimately prevailed over John Adams after an initial tie, certainly would have had a different winner without the additional votes brought on by the compromise. Jefferson is only the first of many slaveholding presidents whose elections were bolstered in this way. Historians similarly speculate that the Indian Removal Act, which only narrowly passed in the House of Representatives, would not have passed without the vote distribution from the Three-Fifths Compromise. It is impossible to imagine all the alternate paths United States history could have taken without the weighting of votes created by this single clause. And this man wanted to tell us, Dillon Cruz, that it was a great move and that you have been misinformed and miseducated. And that's why DEI got to go, because they're teaching you all this woke stuff about the Three-Fifths Compromise being bad. And it was a great move that was meant to bring on equality and freedom. If you don't go on and get the hell on, you and your mama. Okay? Because even after the Civil War and the formal abolition of slavery through the 13th Amendment, the legacy of the Three-Fifths Compromise persisted. It persisted. And I'm going to tell you right now, it persists to today. It delayed the abolition of slavery. It reinforced white supremacy for decades. Because if the law says that you're not a human being, then what rights should you have? Okay? I want to read a quote for you that explains, kind of sums up. The statement was, this is with the court, there is no right, that this is in the Dred Scott ruling, there is no right that the white man is bound to respect. You ever heard that?
Oh, yeah.
Dillon Cruz. There is no right. In other words, you don't have the right to be free. You don't have the right to own property. You don't have the right to build a legacy for your family, because we could sell your family. We could sell your wife right out from under you. As a matter of fact, master can come get your wife in the middle of the night and rape her and return her to you, and there's nothing you could do about it. And then get her pregnant and then rape her daughter too when she becomes of age. This is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened under the United States government lawfully. And this is what you got to understand. Just because it's biblical don't mean it's godly. And just because it's lawful don't mean it's right.
Amen.
I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Just because it's biblical don't make it godly. And just because it's lawful don't make it right. It was lawful to own people. It was lawful put into the United States law that if your skin look like mine, you're not a whole human. You're 3/5 of a human. And we're going to count you in our power to vote, but we're not going to let you vote. And there's no laws that we're going to make in your favor. That's the original taxation without representation. We're going to tax your body. We're going to tax your soul. We're going to tax your womb. We're going to tax your seed. We're going to tax your life. We're going to tax your legacy. We're going to use you up from the time you fall out your mama's stomach to the time you go into the grave and go meet Jesus. We're going to tax your whole entire life for generations without representation. And you mean to tell me it was a great move, motherfucker? That's why Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, youth pastor of I don't know whose church, because if that's what you believe, you shouldn't be standing in front of none of God's people, especially young minds, saying anything about any motherfucking thing. But that's why he's this motherfucker today. Know your history. And he had a nerve to say that. He actually said that. They didn't play that part. At the end of his little propaganda, whitewashing, erasing history, little rant he had in his little office, this motherfucker had the nerve to say, know your history. You know your history. Doggone seed of the colonizer. Know your history, because I know mine. Know yours. Doggone devil. Know your history. And this is why they want to ban books.
Yep.
This is why they want to snatch books off the shelves in schools and libraries. This is why they want to take out AP African American history out of it, because they don't want you to know about all of that. They want to paint this picture of America that doesn't even exist today, let alone existed back then. Anyway, that's all I got to say about it. I hope you got some good news. Or a scripture or something.
Yeah, I got some good news. But I also just want to chime in a little bit, because I wrote about the 3/5 compromise in my first book. So, Micah, I do know the history. And if you need a book, pick up Go Golden and read chapter 5, Mr. Beckwith, and then pass it all around to your youth in Indiana, where you're the lieutenant governor.
And Google that was the most. You can literally just put in Google, what is the impact of the 3/5 compromise? Yeah. And it'll give you a whole history lesson.
I mean, the whole damn thing. And here's another thing. In the South, they wanted to ensure a continued population of the enslaved. So they moved it from a patrilineal to a matrilineal. Mm-hmm. So if it was an African descended person, even if the father was white and
they had
free,
to do that because they was raping the women,
right? Or even if it was a free person of any race, if the woman was enslaved, the baby was enslaved. But mostly it was the white masters like Thomas Jefferson, who serially raped Sally Hemings, that made that law. So Micah Beckwith,
they had to switch it that way.
Yeah,
because they the baby daddies of all these mulatto children, and it can't be based on them. It had to be based on the mother to keep them in slavery. You can't birth your way into. You can't get birthright citizenship because your daddy white.
That's right. That's right.
No. If your mother black, you black, which means you a slave, which means you have no rights, which means you're 3/5 of a human. And there it is.
That's right. Yeah. So there is some good news this week. Columbia student Mohsen Madawi is free on bail after the judge ordered his release from federal custody. He was another Columbia student who was arrested for having the temerity to call genocide genocide. He didn't do anything
And
wrong.
apparently, if you say genocide, you're against genocide. That makes you anti-Semitic some kind of way.
Yeah, and he said and at a large gathering of people after he was released, I am saying it loud and clear to President Trump and his cabinet. I am not afraid of you, he said outside of Vermont courthouse. So that's good news. Trump lost that human rights violation case in court. And my prayer is that the law, that the guardrails and the checks and balances provided by the judiciary is going to start dismantling his nonsense, and that his economic stuff is going to blow up in his face so fast that even Republicans start to get the message, and maybe we put impeachment on the table. There's already articles of impeachment that are dead on arrival, but one congressman has put forth the articles of impeachment. So that's the good news. And this week, the word on the street is going to come from the El Salvadoran Archbishop Oscar Romero, who people may remember was murdered because he taught that the Bible had a predilection for taking care of the poor in El Salvador. And he said, when we struggle for human rights, for freedom, for dignity, when we feel that it is a ministry of the church to concern itself for those who are hungry, for those who have no schools, for those who are deprived, we are not departing from God's promise. He comes to us, he comes to free us from sin, and the church knows that sin's consequences are all such injustices and abuses. The church knows it is saving the world when it undertakes to speak also of such things. And one of the reasons why I chose that is because A, El Salvador's been in the news a lot lately, but B, because people like Andrew Walker will pretend that taking care of the poor through the use of government resources is not what the Bible teaches. Well, we didn't have the democracy in the era of the ancient Near East when the New Testament was written, or in the ancient Near East when the Hebrew Bible was written. But we have the collective resources now to take care of people, whether at home or abroad. And it is a justice issue. He claimed it's not a justice issue to do foreign aid. The United States has been pillaging and metaphorically and really raping, pillaging all over the fucking planet for a long time, with the world's largest military and statecraft, so-called statecraft, that is just resource theft and regime change and all kinds of things. Read a history book, folks. We are mostly not the good guys when it comes to foreign policy. So
most people should know that.
Yeah,
I'm worried for Traore over there in well, we can talk about that next time. Is it Burkina Faso? I'll have to get because he is between France and the United States. I believe they're gonna try to figure out how to disappear him. He's doing too much empowering for the people.
Oh yeah, I saw that on Democracy Now! The other day.
He's doing a little bit too much colonial reversal for them.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. But yeah.
But if y'all don't know who Oscar Romero is, Raul Julia played him in a biopic called Romero that came out in 1989. I highly recommend it. There's a scene where he's walking with a peasant, and the peasant's like reading the Bible and goes, "Oh my God, if they knew this was in here, they would destroy the book," or words to that effect, because it had so much to do with the preferential treatment of the poor. So go watch Romero if you can find it.
Well, that is a great word. That is a great word. I know one thing: you cannot serve God without serving the people.
That's right.
And you cannot serve the people without serving God, whether you believe in God or not. Thank you for sharing that with us. And with that, listen, beep, 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 that's all, folks. Thank you for riding out with us on this off day, on this Friday, with the God Squad. We're gonna be back. Yeah,
Oh, you went muted.
oh, did I?
I couldn't hear you, but we'll be back next Thursday on our normal bat time, normal bat channel, and all of that. Like, subscribe, and share. Hey, y'all, we're getting a pretty good number of downloads, but it could be bigger. So, spread the word, spread the God Squad word. Check out Desimber Rose's books. The Church Can Go to Hell, and if you're feeling real bored, you can check out Theological Musings Volumes 1 and 2 from the Evil Empire. And we'll see y'all next week.
See you next week. And also, I'm John Fuga saying, Tell Me Everything, Progress Radio 127. We'll be on there too.
That's right.